Today with us, we have four amazing Rotarians who will be our panelists, and I will be introducing in a bit. This event is being recorded, so if you have any Rotaract friends who are not with us right now but would still love to watch the event, they can do so later through all of our social media platforms. And we'll be posting info on how to do that in our Rotaract 6340 social media pages. The way that this event is going to run is I will ask a series of pre-planned questions that revolve around this topic of vocational service. And then after around half an hour, we will open it up to questions from the audience. And throughout the entire time that the panelists are speaking, you can submit questions to the question box in the chat, and we will be asking them when we have our live Q&A. Now I will do a brief introduction of each of the panelists, starting off with Mr. Michael Brunker. Michael Brunker has 40 years of experience in empowering people and teams in business, nonprofit, and youth development environment. He has founded the San Diego Regional Police Athletic League in 1988, and then he became the executive director of San Diego's inner city Jackie Robinson Family YMCA for 22 years. He was the vice president for mission advancement to help the Y serve all communities throughout San Diego County. He was also named Mr. San Diego in the year 2019, and he received the YMCA San Diego County Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Human Dignity Award. And he is a board member of the San Diego Rotary Club and is the 2023 to 2024 president-elect. Thank you so much for being here, Michael. Next up, we have Tamara Craver. She is currently the CEO of Reality Changers, which is a nonprofit organization that helps first-generation college students get to college. She has 20 years of experience in nonprofit management, executive leadership, and youth development. And prior to Reality Changers, Ms. Craver served as the director of the Posse Foundation in Los Angeles. She's the executive committee chairperson for the Hoover Community Collaborative and a 2020 graduate of Lead San Diego's Influence Program. She also received the designation of CEO of the Year from 2022 from the San Diego Business Journal. Thank you so much for being here, Tamara. Next up, we have David Oates. David Oates has 30 years of strategic planning relations experience dealing with a wide array of adverse public events. And he started off as a U.S. Navy public affairs officer and later became a chief marketing officer in the corporate world and became a nonprofit president after that. He has amazing experience in handling crisis PR situations for orgs of all sorts and sizes. And he is a past president of the Rotary Club of San Diego. He is also currently an assistant governor for Rotary District 5340, and he's a major donor to Rotary International and involved in several youth mentoring activities through Rotary. And he's also a proud SDSU alumni. Go Aztecs. Next up, we have Wendy Urushima-Conn. She is the president and CEO of the Epilepsy Foundation, the previous president and CEO of the Asian Business Association, the previous associate executive director of Center for Community Solutions. She worked at KGTV 10 News as a community affairs manager and a promotion manager and as a weather and traffic reporter for over a decade. She has more than 25 years of experience in community outreach, fundraising, and marketing, and she is currently the chair of the membership committee and a board member at the Rotary of San Diego. She is also the chair of the San Diego Library Commission, the chair of the Southern California Diversity Council, and was actually just appointed by Mayor Todd Gloria to serve on the Women's Commission and serves on many boards for the betterment of the community and has received a multitude of awards for her dedication to the betterment of the community. Thank you so much for being here with us, Wendy. So talk about vocational service. We have the best examples right here of people who have done so much work through their careers and giving back to the communities. And there are so many more things that they have accomplished that I can't list all of them because that could be a whole event of itself. But thank you so much for your time and for coming here today to share your wisdom with us. Now, I wanted to ask the first question, why did you feel tied to this topic of vocational service?
Michael, you want to start?
You know I will, but
That's what I asked.
I was hoping that maybe Wendy would begin. No, but now just first I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here and all those tuning in right now. And the question again, let's frame this again, if I can better understand this, and tell us a little bit more about why we're here tonight and what the reason is for doing this for Rotary.
Of course, yeah. So my position in the Rotaract District is the Director of Vocational Service. So my goal is to increase the awareness of students to know about and what avenues they can do service, especially through their career, because a lot of students maybe like only think of like nonprofit and that's the only way that they can do service. So what are some of the ways that they can do service through their careers, as well as just in general, like advice on what careers to pick, how to develop yourself in a career. And you all have been through so many amazing experiences and can share a lot of that with us. So
thank you for giving the context. And I guess I'll start with how I ended my, professional service career working with the Y when I retired in January 2021. And what happened was I have a good mentor, a good friend and mentor, Ken Blanchard, who wrote a book called Refire, Don't Retire. And so Ken immediately gave me that book and I read it. And as I'm reading the book, I'm kind of saying to myself, I'm not sure this really applies to me, because the whole message in the book was how some folks can work an entire career and not feel significant about what they do. And that's never been the case with me. Everything that I've done, from coaching basketball to starting the police athletic league to going over to the YMCA of San Diego County and serving, and arguably the most critical community in San Diego County at the Jackie Robinson YMCA for 22 years. It was, I always felt significant in what I was doing. And as I read that book, the thing that really came across to me was younger people should read that book too. The Rotaract should all read it, because what you're doing right now, and I know we're going to get into a lot of these questions right now, is will your career allow you to serve others before self? Will your career allow you to really feel significant about what you're doing? And can you really mold your professional career and be a part of something that is being impactful in the places where you live, work, and play? And I did that in Detroit. I've done that in San Diego. I feel good about it, but guess what? I'm unfinished. And so I've got so much more to give and so much more to do.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that response.
Thank you.
Any other view?
Tamara.
I think very similar to what Michael shared. Finding ways to give back and participate can come in all forms and fashions. And I think that's to stick true to that, as you said, you don't have to work at a nonprofit to find those ways to do that, but there's ways in your everyday life that you can find ways to be an asset to your community. And so I think I've always tried to follow the model of, each one teach one. How do I get involved, from passing out water to the unhoused community sometimes, or during election season, dropping off hot coffee and pastries to the election officials. As there's so many ways that you can get involved. And when it comes from the heart, it'll never feel like work. It is just doing good in the community. And I've always believed that when you are a blessing to others, you will always be blessed abundantly. And so I think I've always tried to live life in that way, is that giving is always better than receiving. And when it does come back, it comes back tenfold.
Definitely. I love that quote. That's great.
Wendy?
Yeah, no. One of my favorite quotes is by a leader, Stephen Covey, and that's begin with the end in mind. And so, when you wake up every day, and first of all, I just wanted to give props to the Rotaracts for inviting us, but for all of the young folks joining us tonight, I know you have a million things to do, going to school, working, and finding time for Rotaracts and learning about vocational service. Beginning with the end in mind, what do you want to accomplish in the day? There's going to be all these little things flying your way. And the bigger picture I like to think of is, what do I want to accomplish? What legacy do I want to lead? And sometimes for me, service is we're talking about mental health a lot this year in Rotary, and it could be smiling at someone, paying somebody a compliment, holding the door for someone. As some of my friends in Rotary know right now, I've got a fractured hip. I fractured my hip last week walking the dog and landed splat on the pavement. And so I've been reminded just the little things. Someone saying, I'm like, I'm on crutches. I can't even carry my coffee and I'm an independent woman. And someone saying, let me hold the door for you. Let me hold your coffee. It doesn't, I mean, I've been on a lot of boards all my life. When I was working in television, I joined my first board. Wasn't sure about what that meant, but I thought it was a great way to serve. And I think what, Tamara and Michael have both really even mentioned is when you are the giver, you get 14,000 times more back than what you are giving. It is such a blessing. It is such a blessing to bless other people. And so you're already doing that by being a Rotaract, but take those volunteer opportunities, take those opportunities, especially to be in a leadership role, especially if you think maybe you don't deserve to be there. You all have leadership skills, and that's another great way to bless the community, whether it's through a nonprofit or volunteering in a club at school, volunteering at your church, volunteering with your family, volunteering for neighbor, many, many different ways to serve. So, Mr. Oates.
So I think Wendy, Michael, and Tamara explained extraordinarily well and eloquently about the reason to serve. The question, as I understood it, was why serve in a vocation, in a vocational capacity. So let me add two things on that one. One is self-serving, and one is giving. First off, I will speak for myself. I did not get to where I am today in my profession and be able to do the things that I absolutely love to do by myself. I had a ton of mentors from my college years and undergraduate and high school to my early Navy days, to when I went into the private sector, to starting my own business. And I still have a cadre of people in and out of Rotary, formal and informal, that I rely upon to bounce ideas, to exchange thoughts. I am still in a constant state of learning, and I love it because of that. And I learn from those with whom I am privileged to associate and do that. And so for me, offering an ear, a mentorship within the profession, leadership, business role, something along those natures is, for me, on a selfish standpoint, simply paying it forward. It's the recognition that I owe so much in thanks to so many people who were there for me and are still there for me, that if I can turn around and give that to somebody else, I feel like I am paying forward a karmic debt, which I am glad to do, because I feel so grateful to those who've been before me. But also, I would say, and this is particular not just to Rotary, but in my profession as a PR consultant, I want to build the next generation of people doing something in communications like me. I want to give them the opportunity to learn about the community and be as successful, because at some point they're going to be the next generation of leaders, and they're going to be required to do many things. People will expect good things from them to be experts. And if I can help on that one, I feel like, that's my job as somebody who's, been in the profession for a while. But also on a selfish standpoint, I will tell you that I learn as much from the people with whom I get to help, at least lend an ear in their development, because they're going to see things that I don't. They're going to be more in tune with the trends in communications than I will. And learning from them is just as important. So I get as much out of it from a professional development, in addition to just feeling really good about it, and from a personal fulfillment standpoint, than anything else. So I would say those are the things I would add from the specific question on vocational service.
Definitely, yeah. I feel like a lot of companies are also starting to realize now that if they put like the community first and they put their employees first as well, that's actually something that can help them win and be more profitable. And I feel like that's something that we can all kind of use in our own careers as well. And like you guys said, it's always better to give than receive. And you all have, again, amazing experiences and things that you have done to contribute to the community and through your careers as well. Could you all give us some of those examples of ways that you have done service through your career, just so that the Rotaractors have kind of an idea of what are the different avenues that they might be able to take?
Tamara?
So Repeat the question again. There was one piece that blanked out on me on my end of your question.
No worries. Could you all tell us some of the experiences that you have had and what ways you have given back to your community through your career, just so that
Sure.
the Rotaractors have some examples to go off from when they're
Sure.
what careers they
One,
want?
I would say one of my all-time favorite activities, it actually started when I was in college. There was an organization that was a women's homeless shelter that was attached to a senior living facility. And the two organizations would partner together. So you would have like interaction with the, the kids, with the grandparents, and then you'd have just helping prepare meals for the elderly and serve them for these women that were in this homeless shelter that had been victims of violence. And I started volunteering with them, and it started off with around Thanksgiving, helping to prepare meals, and then it went to Christmas activities and presents and gifts. And it just became such a part of my life that I felt every Sunday I was going to volunteer because I enjoyed so much seeing an untraditional way of bringing two communities together that could support each other. And people who maybe their grandchildren were out of state now had a more of a familial opportunity to work with young people and to also mentor these women, advising them, and then the women could turn around and also provide support. And I did that for so many years, and it broke my heart, unfortunately, when the organization finally closed its doors due to funding. But it started off with just kind of like one of those college things that credit, I went, and then it became a part of my life. And then I even stayed connected to some of those families long term and did adoption of families and supporting them, and they became part of my family. So that was something that may have started off as I needed to do it because it was a college requirement, but then became a very integral part of my life and truly felt connected to the mission and to the families on both sides. And I think from that, those are also two areas that I've always been very involved in, is finding ways to support women that are escaping domestic violence, and also supporting our elderly community. That is a community that often gets overlooked, forgetting that people that are in nursing homes, facilities don't get visitors all the time. And if they do, it's on a Sunday and that's it. The holidays, they're forgotten. And so though that experience has rolled into different parts of my life. So that was something that started off for me very small and has become a very monumental part of my life.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I'll go with Dave next.
So the examples of service, we all share the same affliction that's on this panel, as do folks that I see in attendance, like Steve and certainly several of the Rotaractors. We have a hard time saying no to good causes, and we'll go out of our way to do so. So somebody who watches my Facebook page, in addition to being at every networking event I could possibly go to, I donate blood regularly. I'm still involved in Rotary at a district level and at a club level, and I do several other things with organizations with special needs and so forth like that. But to the question on vocational service, to stick with the topic, I've had the fortune of doing a couple of things that I enjoy. First off, is I will speak at different events, whether it's the local PR Student Society chapter at San Diego State, whether it's to offer myself up at least once a year with, being what I bristle at the term, but being a mentor of a young student in PR or marketing. The reason I bristle at that is I think mentor sometimes gets to look at as more of a senior to understudy. I'm a guy who's got 30 years of doing the wrong thing. So if I can prevent somebody from tripping over the same pitfalls that I have, I'm happy to do so. So I'll do those. I will also volunteer to be if not directly involved on a tactical level, certainly behind the scenes strategic support for various nonprofits when it comes to communication issues, whether promotional or not. And I enjoy doing it for all the reasons that I stated. Number one, developing leaders, recognizing, paying it forward from the people who helped me. And there are more often than not that I learn from somebody asking me a question. I go, I have no idea about that. That was really good. Or, wow, I hadn't thought about using that tactic or that strategy in this area beforehand. So I always pick up a couple of nuggets because I'm in a constant state of learning. So I hope that answers the question. I'll go to Wendy.
Oh, so good. I forgot what the question was. Oh, God.
Examples of ways in
Thank
which
you. Thank you. Thank
do
you. Old lady
vocational
brain
service.
here. I started
Please.
serving at a really young age, but I'm thinking about our audience here of, mostly collegiate folks. And I remember when I was in college and I was in a sorority, and our philanthropic partner was the Alzheimer's Association. So we're like, okay, we're going to go and visit with Alzheimer's patients. And that was a whole new thing for me. And I loved, they were mostly older adults. And they were just so sweet. And they said, so-and-so will keep asking about his wife. His wife passed away many years ago, but he's going to keep asking. So just spending time. And then, we did our monthly Saturday requirement, because that was what we were supposed to do, our Saturday requirement. And then I thought, well, how can I get involved in a deeper level? I said, do you need folks to come back and volunteer? And then I went and helped out at their walk. And I wasn't doing anything glamorous. I was stuffing goodie bags, but I was feeling like I was helping. I was meeting some older adults and really learning from some gems, and also making good connections. So I know, as many of you, maybe you're getting that question, hey, what are you doing when you graduate? What are you doing this summer? Where, how many other places? And one of the things when I am hiring folks, I look at their work history, but I'm also looking at what are they doing when they're not working? Oh, they're leading a team. Oh, they're volunteering at XYZ, the homeless shelter, or they're helping the unhoused. They are a leader in Rotaract. And so all of those things are also, it's showing your heart for service, but it's also showing your ability and desire to go above and beyond. And if you're willing to do that now in college, as you're working and applying for jobs, when I see that extra service component, it says, okay, there's someone I want on my team, because that's someone that's going to say, hey, you need something, I'm here to do it, and I'm happy to do it. And even though it's, 40 hours in 1 minute, I've got it. So I think from a skill development, making connections, all the great warm fuzzies, that's all part of it, but also just in being able to learn new skills and make connections in the community and learn something beautiful that you wouldn't know. I'm also a retired broadcast journalist, so if I can ever help people with media training, things like that. And I go back to my one funny story of, while we are all a work in progress, one of my first days at Channel 10, I was out at a senior facility and we were pairing elementary school kids with older adults. And I said to the older adult, I said, what do you think about all these kids here? And he's like, what kids? I'm like, okay, next interview. Next interview was a cute little boy of Asian descent. He was Vietnamese. And I said, spell your name for the camera. And please spell your name. And he says, my name is Phuc No, Phuc, fuck no, Phuc No. And hence that was the end of the day. Anyway, I got to learn a little cultural diversity. I'm like, Mr. No. I'm like, is he a Mr.? He's 8. But I had an opportunity just to learn from a young person and just learn. So I think it's a great opportunity to give back and do the right thing, but also to build your skill set.
Definitely.
Take us home,
Great
Michael.
story. Oh, thank you, David. Appreciate it. Yes. Great question. And when I reflect on this, and I'm trying to be succinct in my answers because I could go on and on and on, but it's been part of my fabric since I was very young. When I was probably like 10, 11 years old, my father lost his job after working, for a long time with the Goebel Brewing Company in Detroit. They went bankrupt, laid off 3,500 people. And from that point on, he was working in gas stations, car washes, assembly lines at Ford Motor Company and all of that. And I remember, I went to Catholic schools, K through college, and I remember that during that time where the nuns and the priests would like bring wagons of food and toys and stuff at holidays to our house, so that's always impressed me that, when so much has been done for you, you got to do the same and pay it forward in some kind of way. And so my whole career in coaching began, I think, too, when we talk about vocation and work. I was hired on as a custodian at a small Catholic school in Southfield, Michigan. And one weekend they had a basketball game, so I had to open up the gym for that. And I'm sitting in the gym, and the team was at halftime. They're getting beat by like 15, 20 points, and one of the little kids runs down into the gym and says that the coach would like me to come in and offer any tips. Everybody knew I played basketball. I had a big experience with that. And and what could I help out? By the second half, I was coaching the team. We went on to win that league championship, went undefeated. Those players went to Brother Rice High School, where that high school coach then wanted to interview me to be his assistant. We won the state championship in Michigan. Instead of me going to law school, I'm a political science major. I got sidetracked to become an unpaid graduate assistant for Dick Vitale. And if you know anything about being a graduate assistant, college students, you know, you don't get paid that much if you get paid at all. You get that experience, and with the promise that Dick said, if something opens up, I'll have the job. And he then eventually hired me at U of D, but then he made me the youngest assistant coach in the NBA when he went to the Pistons in 1978. And for 2 years, I was with the Pistons, and then came out here to San Diego State in 1980, where I coached from 80 to 87. Left coaching in 87, could have went on and continued coaching, but it would have meant leaving San Diego. And then I started my own program, running an inner city basketball program at Memorial Rec Center, where it was gang infested. There, it was like a drive-through for crack cocaine in the parking lot out there. And all of these things, because I went above and beyond what the job description was, and in this case, trying to be entrepreneurial, but never saying no, people opened up their doors because they knew it was helping us serve others. And it led to the Police Athletic League, which is now called Star Pal. The YMCA is a story in itself. When, we took that old, should have been condemned YMCA, demolished it, raised $40 million to build a brand new state-of-the-art YMCA. And many 7-figure gifts came out of the San Diego Rotary Club. And so it was all about people seeing what you're doing, making an impact, making a difference. And at the Y, probably one of the programs that was most significant, and once again, above and beyond, is we had a program for families surviving violent loss. And the criteria to get into that program was to have a loved one that was killed as a result of gang or gun violence, and they're surviving this violent loss. And at one point, when I left the Y, we had over 400 families in that program. I guarantee you there's no other executive director in the YMCA nationally that had a program at their Y doing that. And that wasn't part of my job description, you see, but it's what I did because I thought it was important.
Definitely. So I think always putting service as one of your priorities benefits you in so many ways. I mean, just personally, and it benefits other people. And even in your career, how Wendy was mentioning how interviewers will look at stuff like that, like what activities are they involved in and what ways are they giving back, and in what ways are they going above and beyond. So thank you all so much. There was such amazing answers. And what advice do you have for Rotaractors who are still like unsure of what career path they want to take? We have a good blend, I would say, of students who know what they want to get into. Like, I know I want to get into HR. There's some students that maybe they're majoring in something, but they're actually really not sure if that's what they want to do. And how does service blend into that decision-making process? So basically, what steps can they take to solidify their career aspirations?
I would like to take this one first. I would say sometimes taking on a volunteer position will help you determine what you want to do and sometimes what you don't want to do. I'm also a former YMCA employee, and I actually found that job, or they found me, because I actually was volunteering. I was a parent volunteer, and I was always like, oh, we should do this. You should look at this, because fundraising was my background. And because I was always willing to show up, I was always willing to go above and beyond. When there was an opportunity, the executive director tapped me and said, hey, we actually have a position that you would be phenomenal for, a director of development and communications. Would you consider it? And I was like, I'm thinking like, I never really thought about working for the Y. And it was because I was visible, because I was involved, I was engaged, that it led to a great job opportunity for me. So sometimes volunteering, outside of it being just a wonderful thing for you to give back, can actually turn into a job opportunity or connections, people that you've met as volunteers. I've met some of the most amazing people in different volunteer opportunities that have led to speaking engagement, job opportunities. There's so many things you can do just simply by volunteering your time. And don't be afraid to try something that you're not sure about, because sometimes the best part of it is finding out what you don't want to do. So if you get a job and you get the experience and you learn and like, that may not be the field for me, but I bet you any amount of money, you've learned something from the supervisor, from the culture, from the environment that you build in your arsenal to get you ready for the next job. So don't be afraid to take something that may not look exactly the way you thought. I mean, if I looked at my professional career, I don't think any of the things I've ever done was planned. Didn't think I'd ever work at the YMCA. Ended up being a wonderful life experience for me. Then I knew education was always in my wheelhouse, but how it kind of happened was always because I put myself in the right spaces by volunteering my time. So I would highly encourage all of you not to be afraid to, if it doesn't look silvery and sparkly and glittery, be okay with that. Take an opportunity and learn from it, and it might open the next door for you. That would be my advice for you all.
That's great advice.
Wendy, what do you have?
I can go next. I think one of the key things, it's super easy. Show up. All you got to do is show up, right? When I see the Rotaractors at our Rotary lunch, or when I get to come to a Rotaract event, I'm like, oh, heck yeah, right? You never know who you're going to meet. I love, Tamara, your story about, you were the amazing volunteer. Like, we want to hire her. I've hired people that were volunteering for me. I'm like, hey, I just had someone go out on pregnancy, disability leave. What do you do on Friday? I'm like, okay. And I think many of my jobs, I knew I wanted to work in broadcast, but I had interned at Channel 10 when I was in college. And at the time, there were like 400 people applying to be an intern on the morning show. I'm like, I don't know why they picked me, but we had to do a writing test and do all these things, unpaid. So all of these things that, your path may go sideways. I mean, I love when folks know, like, I want to be fill in the blank, an engineer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a teacher. But I think it's also okay. I went into UCSD undeclared. I did not know. I was eventually declared a communications major, but like Tamara, I never said, I'm going to be the CEO of the Asian Chamber of Commerce. What do I know about small business law and whatnot, or advocacy? I knew I cared about the small business or the Asian Pacific Islander community when I was hired as the Associate Executive Director for Center for Community Solutions, a nonprofit dealing with sexual assault and domestic violence. I didn't have that experience in my background, but I knew I could run an organization. I knew I was good at sales and business development. They're like, great, you're going to write our first ever fundraising plan. I'm like, ooh, crud. I never went to fundraising school. What's a major gift? Well, you're going to write the plan. I'm like, I know. I put together a lot of deals in media. I brought in a lot of money for the station. And so I think the other tip is for those that are undecided or you don't know, taking some jobs and saying, I really hate this. I really don't like numbers. I really don't want to do this. So that's great. And that I had an awful supervisor. So now I know that is a supervisor I will never be. So never underestimate. I always say the path, I've worked in corporate America. I've worked in government, chamber of commerce. I've worked in nonprofit, and everything I've done has led me to where I am now. I was doing acting and modeling way back when. I don't know why, but that's helped me in my on-air presentations. I think it all adds experience, and experience is great. And I'm still a work in progress, and there's still things that I, on this call, will learn from the Rotaractors that I did not know yesterday. I see Ari there. I mean, you want to talk about a go-getter, overachiever. You want to learn something, you go to lunch with Ari. Same thing with Azareel, right? You want to learn something, you spend some time with a Rotaractor, because we're old. I'm just speaking for myself. And so, I'm like, I don't know what button to press. I'm going to call Azareel. He'll fix it for me. So anyway, yeah, every experience is just building you and getting you ready for that next phenomenal career opportunity and way to serve.
Definitely. You can always learn from an experience, even if it was like maybe a little bit negative. Now you know what you don't want to do, like you guys said. Appreciate that. Great answers. David or Michael?
I'll add to this one because I was just having a conversation with somebody less than a week ago. The other element that I would put in this is you may have 1, 2, or even 3 choices. Don't get caught up in thinking that there is an absolute right answer, the best answer. And it's, if you don't do it now, it's never coming back. That is 100% BS. You are so early on in your career, whether you're still in college or whether you're a young professional, the reality is this: the person with the most experience wins. And if you don't know which you want to do, it's because you haven't experienced what it is that you want to do. And trying to find a syllabus or a state accredited rubrics that tells you got to weight it this area or this area is irrelevant, because this is a personal choice for you that only comes from trying different things. So if you're not sure which one, don't get caught up which one's the absolute right answer and which one's the absolute wrong answer. If it turns out that one was good, but maybe you're still thinking that one's better, well, then find a path to go do that in whatever time frame works for you. I know I'm dating myself, and most of the Rotaractors will have no idea who I'm referring. But baseball's my first love. And there was a great baseball player in the 1950s and 1960s who went on to manage. His name was Yogi Berra, catcher for the New York Yankees. And he would have these weird ass sayings that everybody would be scratching their head afterwards and went, what did you say? And one of them was, he said, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. I was like, wait, what does that mean? Well, in my 53rd year of existence, I finally figured out what that meant. It meant it doesn't matter whether you go the left side or the right side of the fork in the road. Don't stand there idle. Go one direction. You can always backtrack. Do-overs are fine. I've had plenty of them in my career, and they've only gotten me better, because now I literally, and on the profession, and knock on wood, I get to do this for the rest of my life, right? And I've enjoyed all the things I did, active duty military, and all the things I did in the 22 odd years of, development in the corporate sector from PR and marketing standpoint. But I got to tell you, I'm having the time of my life, and I can't believe I get to wake up every morning and do what I get to do for a profession. And I would not have gotten there had it not been for all of the bumps and trials and tribulations and unpaved roads and areas. I worked for an agency one time where I walked in 2 months later, like, this was a mistake. But I had to tough it out for a couple of years because I was doing my MBA at San Diego State, and it worked in the schedule. And you learn pretty quickly, what not to do. And I'm glad I had that experience. I'm glad it's in the rearview mirror, but I'm glad for that experience, right? So just go. It's not the end all be all. You will have opportunities again if you manufacture it. And that's the one thing that I would add to that one. Michael?
Great points by everybody. Not sure what more I can add to it, but I am. Listen carefully. So two things. One is sometimes you need to answer the call. Sometimes we're going to get called to do some things and you're going to say, what in the world, should I or shouldn't I? And I know for college students, that's not easy, but, and I want to preface this with, don't quit your daydream job. And so I'm not sure how many of you have a daydream job right now, but for me, what happened, I mentioned that high school basketball team I coached in Michigan. On our way to the state championship, there were two players on the team, Sam and David Washington. Their father, Sam Washington, ran the legendary St. Cecilia program in Detroit. That's where every pro, every top college player, it was a prototype of all the midnight basketball leagues, anything that was out there and around the nation, it was St. Cecilia's in Detroit. And Sam suffered a heart attack during the summer between my junior year. So I was like 20 going on 21. In my senior year, I'm political science major, pre-law, all of that. And Sam asked me to help him run St. Cecilia's when he had that heart attack. Now, the easiest thing I could have done as a college student who was already, burning the candle at all ends, coaching and doing all of this stuff, is said, I don't know if this is the best time. I don't know if I can handle that. But I jumped at it. And what I did is in jumping at that, I ran St. Cecilia's the summer between my junior and senior year and after my senior year in college. And it was legendary in that arena. Fast forward to San Diego State in 1987, when we got fired because we had an athletic director come in, decide they want to make a coaching change. And we lost our jobs after, 2 years earlier, we went to the NCAA tournament, won the WAC tournament championship, but we had like 8 athletic directors in the 7 years I was there. And for the first time, they sent us to the Final Four. So all those 7 years I was at San Diego State never invested in us to go to the Final Four. But they sent us this year because that's where all the coaches are looking for jobs, right? During the championship game, I had tickets. It was in New Orleans. It held at the Superdome. Instead of me going to the game, I sat in my room and got out my day planner, and I just wrote down what I wanted to do over the next 12 months. And the closing thing would be return to the Final Four as a visitor. But I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to leave coaching because I had enough of coaching. I knew it was never going to be a level playing field. And what I managed to do from that point on is recreate St. Cecilia's at Memorial Rec Center, bring the first police athletic league to San Diego, the 8th largest city in the country at that time, go on and bring the National Youth Sports Crew. I started things here. Those were my daydream things of, bringing the same things that help protect me from myself when I was a kid growing up in Detroit. And that was it, you see. And so I made that happen, and I never left it behind. And I give, real honor and glory to all those folks that invested in me back in Detroit, where I could replicate the same here in San Diego.
Thank you so much for that response. So now I wanted to open it up for a live Q&A from the audience as well. I know I asked a lot of questions and you guys gave some amazing responses. I'm sure the Rotaractors also have questions based off of the responses that you all gave. So any of the Rotaractors, you guys can either unmute yourself, raise your hand, or type the question in the chat and I can ask it for you. Any of those. And I've got just one last one if anybody wants to jump in on this one, maybe just one of you. What advice do you have for Rotaractors who are trying to grow and elevate their careers, but they feel anxious or nervous from putting themselves out there?
I'll take that one. I think my biggest tip is don't be afraid to fail. Like, really, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? You apply for a job, they don't call you back. So what? There's so many times where we think we have to be perfect. We have to have all the job skills. We don't know anyone at that event. I'm a little nervous to go up and talk to someone like Mr. Brunker. I mean, he's the incoming president. I tell you, just get past the fear and hit go. I like how Michael said, don't give up on your daydreams. I'm curious of the folks online here, and maybe just put a 1 in the chat, but have any of you had any other, I don't want to say haters, but maybe folks that are not supporting your dream, right? Put a 1 in the chat. Could be a family member, could be your mother, could be a neighbor, like, oh, you're not qualified, right? 1, yeah. So you know what I like to do when I get the haters? I work even harder, because I had people tell me, oh, Wendy, you will never, like that, you will never get a job on air and television. Do you know what market we are? We are number 27. You will have to go start out holding a camera in a cornfield in Iowa. Now, first of all, what's wrong with Iowa? So, and some of you have heard my story before. I said, okay, well, I'm going to go hire a videographer and go shoot a stand-up at Wind and Sea, and I'm going to send it to the news director at Channel 8. I didn't have a background in meteorology, but I got a call and he said, I love your energy. I love, and I made it to the top 3. I ended up getting hired at Channel 10. But if I had listened to those haters and sometimes it's coming from love, right? It's coming from a parent that says, maybe you shouldn't be an artist and maybe you should go to law school. But what if your passion is art? You really, you don't want to give up on your daydreams. I love how you said that, Michael, and use any of that negativity to fuel your passion to be successful. And if you fail, so what? I always say, if you fail, that's great, right? It's a learning opportunity. And when I started doing when I don't have a broken hip, I'm usually a trail runner. And sometimes I come in last place. I often come in last place. They're rolling the snacks away by the time I came in at my 100-miler. But I said, it's showing up as a victory, hitting the go button, submitting the resumes, making the email to Tamara saying, I want to have lunch with you, emailing Oates in a push-up contest, you'll probably lose, but just don't that's right, that's what I'm talking about. But don't let fear hold you back from being awesome, because you are awesome. You are awesome. Everyone should tell yourself, I am awesome. You're awesome for showing up. So don't listen to the haters. That's my tip.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. Yeah, and you reminded me of like one of my first luncheons. I was like a little bit nervous, everybody's a CEO and something, and but all of these people, all of these Rotarians are amazing people that are really willing to help you out. They put community first, and so they would definitely love to help out young people as well. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And like they said, if you fail, that's a learning experience. And eventually, who cares about what the haters say?
And probably nobody does that. Nobody does that better than David Oates. I'll just tell you that right now. I know that during his presidency, This was during the pandemic. It was the pandemic, and we pivoted and went virtual. And what David started with these virtual meetings is not only the meetings, but then we had these happy hours before the meeting. And so we come in and talk about what's going on in your world before David would come in and interview the guests or whatever it might be. And so in one of those meetings that David created, that happy hour, people were going around talking about, well, how's the pandemic affecting you? And I just kind of blurted out, well, I've been furloughed for 91 days without pay from the Y, you know? And so one of our members, who many of you know, if you go to Rotary meetings, Nancy Scott, she just blurts out, oh, that's horrific, that's terrible. And when she said that, my response was, a setback is nothing but a setup for a comeback. And as soon as they heard that, the mastermind, David Oates, says, we need to start a comeback committee. So we started a comeback committee during his presidential term, where we had up to 70 Rotarians sign up for this committee. Those folks that were in need of support with their careers, and included Rotaracts too, where we're trying to figure out what in the world are they doing as they're going to school online, looking for career launches. And then also Rotarians who could help them with their careers and give them career coaching and make all that happen. It was a beautiful thing. David, I just want to thank you again for making that happen.
You were the one who did that. And so I'm grateful that I had the idea and turned it back and said, hey, I think we found our chairperson. So I'm grateful that you did that. And it really got people through. If only they felt they didn't feel alone, right? They didn't feel disconnected. They felt like people cared. And it was always a great brainstorming great brainstorming sessions, as well as introductions. So I'm grateful to you. But to that, let me piggyback if I could, because the question is a really good one, which is, if somebody's, afraid of moving forward, that usually comes from a fear of failure, which was touched on earlier. Let's change the math, shall we? We live in a society in many respects that looks at the win-loss record and nothing else, right? Did you win more? Did you lose more? Here's the reality, and I'm going to go back to the baseball analogy. You will fail more than you succeed. That's life, right? Baseball's my first love. The guy who in Major League Baseball paid $1 bazillion because they hit the ball better than anybody else has a batting average somewhere around 350, right? 0.35. And if you know math, 0.35 is a decimal that stands for 35%. 35%. So figure this out. The person who is considered the best hitter in baseball walks up to the plate knowing full well they're likely to fail 2 out of every 3 times they step up with the plate. That's life. You try new things, you attempt things, it doesn't work out. The definition of success, like that baseball player, is having the audacity, the gumption, the unmitigated gall to get up, in the baseball case, within 3 innings and try it again. So stop worrying about the win-loss record and worry about the amount of times you step up to the plate and swing the bat, because you will get your hits. You will learn from that. You will connect. And let me tell you something, there's going to be a time where you're going to sit there and you're going to be in the zone and you're going to knock it out of the park, in profession and in your life. But you got to step up at the plate. This universe wants you to succeed. You just got to show intention that you believe enough in yourself to get up every time you fail and step forward. Anybody who tells you they succeed more than they fail is kidding themselves and is kidding you. That's okay. You're enough and you're valuable. Keep at it. Keep swinging the bat. I promise you, life will be so good.
Put me in, Coach.
Beautifully said.
Yes.
We do have a question in the chat, and then Jesus also has his hand raised. We'll do the question from the chat first. How do we make those we work alongside and volunteer for feel valued and empowered?
Holy crap, say please and thank you as often as you can. It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot of thought. Be genuine, be authentic, say please and say thank you. And mean it, right? And don't worry, and as you hopefully aren't so hard on yourself for the win-loss record, don't be so hard on others, as long as there's still intention to get up and improve, and you're seeing that. The ones I always gave up on, there was that I had to, my business, I had to fire one individual because he just stopped trying, and there's nothing you can do about that. And that was unfortunate.
And Michaela, great question. It's often said that appreciation is oftentimes the greatest gift one can receive. Give it out.
We have a question from Jesus.
Thank you, Azareel, and thank you as well to all the panelists for just the endless golden nuggets, for your time and attention, for being here. So much value being shared. But my question is just a quick question for you all. If you guys each have a book recommendation, any one book that stands out in your life that's either been passed down from a mentor or just a book that's helped you move forward personally and professionally. Thank you.
How to Win Friends and Influence People. One of the best books I ever received, and I use it all the time, and I give it out a lot as well.
I'm halfway through that one.
Oh, good, good.
Mine is a little different. The one that had come immediately to mind was a book co-written by Vice Admiral James Stockdale and his wife Sybil Stockdale. Admiral Stockdale was a Vietnam prisoner of war, the most senior officer that was shot down and imprisoned for, if memory serves me, a little over 6 years. And it chronicles his perseverance in captivity, under torture, and it also chronicles his wife's perseverance to let that story be told, and the story of other POWs. Now, I mean, the story itself is compelling and it's and pretty heroic, but what I take away from that still is the need to persevere in times where there doesn't seem to be a lot of hope, because you will, and I'm sure some of you have already done so in certain circumstances in your lives, where you have just felt completely helpless, completely downtrodden, that there's just nothing else to give. And at those moments, just getting up and, as Wendy said, to be present will open doors. And so that's what I take away from that. So that's the book that comes to mind. In Love and War, James Stockdale, Sybil Stockdale.
Yeah, I've been blessed to have a mentor since 2012 by the name of Ken Blanchard, who's written many books. And I just dropped a link in the chat. The book I would highly recommend is The Servant Leader. And everything we're talking about is right there. And I think you'd appreciate it.
One of my favorite books that I read recently, and I reread a lot of business books. This is kind of fun reading and inspiring reading and difficult reading. It's a book called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And he was a Navy SEAL, this elite athlete, grew up in a family of poverty and child abuse. And in this book, Can't Hurt Me, he goes on to be just this phenomenal athlete and ultra runner, and really overcame adversity. And he talks about the 40% rule, that we really only utilize 40% of our brain to push forward and to be successful. And there's always more than you think you've got. Like, if you think you can't, there's always more. And we talk a lot about, the brain gives up before the body does. Tell yourself you can and see what happens. Tell yourself you can't and also see what happens. But it's a great book. David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me.
I love David Goggins. He actually, you remind me of David Goggins because you're an ultra marathon runner, but you're even better because you do a lot of service and stuff like that. So,
You're sweet, Azareel. Thank you.
any other questions from any members of the audience? I had one more that I want to ask as well. Have you ever had to face any ethical dilemmas at your work or in your career that your service above self mindset made you question? Or in other words, have you ever had to use the 4-way speech test to make a decision?
I can go quickly. I know we're running out of time. When I was working in television at ABC Channel 10, I was the only female and the youngest person on the leadership team. And our station, our our corporation, we were owned by McGraw-Hill, who's a publisher, and we had just won a Working Mothers Best Place to Work as recognized by Working Mothers magazine. Great honor across from McGraw-Hill. And one of the male managers in the meeting says, well, what the hell are we going to do now? All those women, you know, they're going to be asking for a breastfeeding room and a parking space. And I'm sitting here cringing, but I'm like 20 something, right? And I'm in this room of all senior leaders, men. The only other female was the executive assistant. And I'm just saying, say something. I'm like, no, don't say something. You're going to get fired. And finally I said, I'm just going to use my voice. And I said, excuse me. So 50% of our employees are female-ish, and you all, and then I just went off on a tangent. I said, you know, you have mothers, you have daughters, you have sisters. Is that really a smart business thing to do? And is that really a kind thing to say? I think not. And then I said, oh crap, I'm going to get fired. And he said, oh, I was just kidding. He wasn't kidding, but I said, okay, I deserve to be here. I'm going to stand up and use my voice for what I believe in. And I didn't get fired, and it was okay. So I think all of us have probably experienced that. And sometimes it's just speaking up, and we talk about being an upstander versus a bystander. And sometimes it's not always the easiest path, but if it's eating at your gut, so hopefully that doesn't happen that often, but it happens.
Yeah, so definitely stand up for yourself. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for me, it's happened often, and a lot of times, especially in the world of financial development, there's a mantra that says, show me the money. And so the ethics behind that to me was always troubling. And I know the work that I did at the Jackie Robinson YMCA, especially in our capital campaign. I just dropped another book link in the chat. It's called Asking by the legendary Gerald Panis. He was my financial development mentor that helped us raise the $40 million. And he couldn't emphasize enough about the importance of relationships and not show me the money. And so when you're in arenas in nonprofits where, you know, they're looking at somebody as a dollar sign, you know, not as a person, you don't get to know them. It's, you know, I've always had big problems with that. And one of the reasons I got out of coaching college basketball is because of all the cheating that I know was going on. And it was never a level playing field. So all this, now they're finally paying players. They've been paying players a long, long time. So this is nothing new. It's just legal right now. But you know, you have to make a decision. You can either watch it or leave it. And I left it.
Thank you.
I have to use the four-way test every day. I'm in crisis communications. I get a client coming in that feels they're being disparaged because of accusations, and the first thing you got to figure out is, well, are there any truth to the accusations, and what's the reality? Because I'm not a public defender, so I tell people I help good individuals and good organizations communicate their way out of bad situations, and sometimes it's of their own doing, right? But if they're not being forthright, candid, transparent, I throw that fish back in the water. It's not worth it for me. It's not. It goes against my core values and what I stand for, and the money is irrelevant. But you know, I'm in a position now because I love what I do and I get to do it often that I don't have to worry about it as much. I'm not saying I have to worry about it at all, but there were times where, you know, it was either this and I don't get paid this month, and, you know, I got expenses like everybody else. And, you know, there were times where you really had to abide by the four-way tests and your values at the short-term expense, but the long-term gains are so much better because you really do set yourself back. And there's that slippery ethics of, well, I'll do this one time and I'll make it up. There's a woman, if you've seen it, you Google her, called Gina Champion-Cain, who was a lauded businesswoman. And I actually worked for the receiver that started running her businesses after she got sued by the SEC and then later charged with that. And what I can tell you sitting from the sidelines is, I think her scam, that was the largest Ponzi scam in the history of San Diego County, that she is now serving a 15-year jail term for. Probably started out in sort of the same vein. Well, I'll just do this once and I'll make it up, and it just got away from her. And I would caution you that if you suspend your ethics or the four-way test once, it'll be easy to do the second time, and the next thing you know, you're severely underwater.
Definitely. I've heard that even from HR leaders that if you have exceptions to your policy, you no longer have a policy. So I think it's the same thing with ethical decision making.
The only thing I would add to that is very similar to what Michael shared is, all money's not good money. And sometimes you have to make decisions, especially if you're in a position to get donations from people. During the pandemic, when we were on furlough, we had a donor who wanted to give us money to not do a diversity, equity, inclusion statement and initiative. That would have saved my staff from being on furlough. It was not something I could do or would do or was willing to do. And I'm glad I stuck to my guns. So just remember, even in fundraising, when you're running businesses, all money's not good money. And sometimes you have to say, no, thank you, or we're not the right organization for you, and stick to your guns. Even years ago, I worked at the American Heart Association, and we had a cigarette company that was closing and wanted to give us a large grant. I had to say no. Yes, would it have been phenomenal to exceed my goals by, hundreds of thousands of dollars? Absolutely. But even if you changed your name, you're still a cigarette company. And I work for the American Heart Association. I cannot take your gift. So just remember that sometimes all money's not good money.
Definitely. Well, thank you all so much. We are out of time, but once again, thank you all to the panelists for being here, for sharing your wisdom with us. This is really invaluable that, a lot of students don't get the opportunity to hear from people like you, and that's a privilege that us Rotaractors have. And thank you so much, Rotaractors, for being here and for being willing to listen to these people as well. And I'm going to rewatch this later and take notes as well. So thank you all so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Fun times. Please reach out if there's anything we can do to assist you.
Absolutely.
Or we may reach out to you saying, can you assist us?
100%. Be well, everybody. See you soon.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.